The criminals of Gotham City better watch out, because in less than 2 weeks, a brand new Caped Crusader will be cleaning up the streets. To help celebrate the first new standalone Batman movie in a decade, I wanted to spend a couple of weeks spoiling some of his greatest video game adventures. Starting with Batman, Revenge of the Joker. Or is it Return of the Joker? Actually, it's both. First released on the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1991, and then later remade and renamed for the Genesis, this reunites the Dark Knight with one of his most popular foes. Turn back now if you don't want to know what happens next, because today we're going to spoil the stories and endings for Batman, Return of the Joker, and Batman, Revenge of the Joker. This is Game Over, the early years. When Sunsoft released Batman, the video game, on the NES back in 1990, they found that they had a game on their hands that both critics and consumers loved. Seeing the cartridges fly off the shelves, they wanted to capitalize on the success as quickly as possible. But there were just two problems. Batman Returns was still 2 years away, and they didn't own the rights. With these two hurdles in the way, Sunsoft did the next best thing. They released a game called Return of the Joker that could pass as a sequel to the 1990 game without any of the pesky movie connections. When precious metals go missing at the Gotham City mines, the police fear that these rare materials are going to be used to create toxic weapons. Fearing that they're ill-equipped to solve this case, Gotham's finest light up the bat signal and call for help. And it's a good thing that they did, because one look at the evidence is all Batman needs to know that this is the handiwork of the Joker? I mean, with the toxic weapons and mines and materials and all that, this sounds like something that Falcone or the Black Mask or maybe even Poison Ivy would try to pull off. But sure, Sunsoft, if you want the Joker to be the villain, then we can just have the Joker be the villain. Now, I know what you're thinking. Isn't the Joker dead? I mean, we saw Batman knock the guy right off of a tower in the very last game. How on earth did he return from that? Well, here's the thing that you need to know. This isn't actually a sequel to Batman the video game. The subtitle certainly suggests it, but apparently the Joker returned from a vacation or maybe a stint in Arkham Asylum, because he definitely didn't return from dying in that last game. However, Return of the Joker certainly wants you to believe that this is a continuation, as it literally starts where the last game left off. Yeah, we're right back at the Gotham City Cathedral for some reason, which is now guarded by a Zeppelin and this guy named Ace Ranger. This leads to an electrifying fight through the Joker's warehouse, which certainly resembles the factory level from the first game. It quickly turns into a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up, which may be one of the reasons why this is one of my favorite levels. When Batman finally emerges from the Joker's warehouse, he finds himself on a snowy mountain, which is suspiciously close to the excavation mine that the police were investigating. This leads to a train ride to the Joker's refinery, where he rides an elevator and gets into a fight with a master CPU, obviously. After punching the computer a bunch of times, our hero escapes through the sewer system, where we once again get into one of those exciting shoot-'em-up sections. This takes him directly to the Joker's ammunition base, which, as you can tell, is being guarded by this tank. Yo, and the Joker is here too. I mean, yes, it's out of character for the Joker, and it does seem a little weird to fight one of Batman's most iconic villains here. But you know, we're already like 6 levels into this thing, and it needs to end. The bad news is that Batman wasn't able to finish the job and the Joker got away. The good news is that we're now free to explore the island of Hacienda, which is easily the most visually impressive level yet. This eventually leads to the ultimate showdown between Batman and the Joker, who's now sitting in a giant mech suit. Despite the advanced firepower, the Caped Crusader once again comes out on top, and this is what happens next. 1 year after the Joker returned on the NES, Sunsoft decided to remake the game for the Genesis and give it a new subtitle, Revenge of the Joker. It's the same game, only this time with 16-bit graphics that are supposed to be better? I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I kind of prefer the style of the 8-bit version. I mean, just look at how bad the island of Hacienda looks. The whole thing's a real mess. Graphics aside, Batman once again chases the Joker to the mech suit, where we do that whole final fight dance once again. Here's how the Genesis version of the game ends. Not long after Sunsoft released the Genesis remake, they started working on a slightly different version on the Super NES. This included completely revamped bosses and levels, some of which managed to take full advantage of the Mode 7 effects. Although the game was basically finished, Sunsoft ended up not releasing it, so the only way to experience these days is through a prototype ROM found online. It's worth checking out, especially if you've played through the NES and Genesis versions, as there are some major changes to some of the most iconic parts of the game. One of the biggest changes comes in the form of the Joker, who now fights in a giant laughing face, as well as a completely different mech suit at the very end. No matter how impressive the new technology is, Batman once again beats the Joker, and this is how the Super NES version ends. Now, just in case you're curious, there is a Game Boy version from 1992 that radically shakes up the story and levels. We're not gonna dive too deep into the Joker's plan here, as all you really need to know is that he's returned and Batman is back doing the thing that he does best. It's not very exciting, but here is how the Game Boy version ends. As follow-ups that aren't really follow-ups go, this is a pretty good faux sequel. The action is exciting, the levels are fun to play, plus I kinda like how it's a completely different experience depending on which platform you go with. That said, I think I prefer the Genesis ending to the others. This is another one of those endings where the castle crumbles in the distance, and I feel like the Genesis version did a better job than the NES original. That said, the NES ending is a close second, with the other two barely worth talking about at all. I mean, I'm not even sure that Super NES ending is even finished. At least, I hope it wasn't. Honestly, I'm not sure any of these endings would be a satisfying conclusion for the Batman. But I think they work well for these Batman games. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Game Over, the early years. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes almost every week. In fact, we're going to be back next week with yet another Batman ending. Plus, we've already looked at a lot of classic Batman endings in a previous episode. Check that out in the Game Over playlist. Now, here's the question I have for you. Which of these Batman games has the best ending? I'm talking about Return of the Joker or Revenge of the Joker, on any platform that we talked about today. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with reviews of both Martha is Dead and Ghost on the Shore. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those kinds of weeks. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,